Madison Baker clutched her champagne flute with trembling fingers, scanning the crowded charity gala for an escape route. Across the ballroom, her ex-fiancé Daniel Winters had just walked in with his new girlfriend draped on his arm. 6 months hadn't been enough time to erase the humiliation of finding him in bed with her former assistant. Now, they were heading straight toward the bar where she stood frozen. "Breathe," Madison whispered to herself. "Just act natural." But panic surged through her body. She couldn't face him. Not tonight, when her design firm was finally gaining traction after the messy split that had nearly bankrupted her both financially and emotionally. This charity event for children's art education programs was her first real networking opportunity since starting over. She couldn't afford another public meltdown. In desperation, Madison scanned the crowd and spotted a tall man standing alone near a marble column. His back was to her, but something about his confident posture made her decision immediate. She downed her champagne in one gulp, set the glass on a passing waiter's tray, and made her move. "There you are!" Madison exclaimed with practiced brightness, sliding her arm through the strangers and leaning into him with casual familiarity. "I've been looking everywhere for you." The man stiffened momentarily before turning to face her. Madison's breath caught in her throat. His eyes were an unsettling shade of blue, like deep water on a clear day, and they were now studying her with amused curiosity. "Have you now?" he responded, his voice low and smooth. A slight smile played at the corner of his lips. Madison glanced over her shoulder. Daniel was 30 feet away and getting closer. "Please," she whispered urgently, "my ex is coming this way. Just play along for 5 minutes and I'll explain everything." Understanding flickered in the stranger's eyes, and without missing a beat, he shifted his position to face her more directly, effectively shielding her from view. "Jackson Reed," he offered, extending his hand formally despite their already intimate stance. "Madison Baker," she replied, relieved at his quick adaptation. "Thank you for this. I swear I'm not crazy." "The jury's still out on that," Jackson replied with a hint of humor, "but I'm willing to hear your case." For the next several minutes, they engaged in a convincingly intimate conversation about nothing in particular. Jackson played his role perfectly, occasionally touching her elbow or leaning in to whisper something that made her laugh genuinely. He was surprisingly easy to talk to, and Madison found herself relaxing despite the circumstances. "Is the threat still imminent?" he asked after a while, scanning the crowd casually. "I think he's moved to the other side of the room," Madison replied, allowing herself a discreet glance around, "but I should probably stay engaged a bit longer to be convincing." "By all means," Jackson said, signaling a waiter for fresh drinks. "Though I am curious what catastrophic event would occur if you actually faced this ex of yours." Madison's smile faltered. "Nothing catastrophic, just humiliating. He left me for my assistant 6 months ago. Tonight was supposed to be my triumphant return to society, not a reminder of being betrayed and dumped." Jackson's expression sobered. "His loss, clearly. That's kind of you to say, but you don't even know me." "I know you're resourceful in a crisis," he replied with a grin that transformed his serious features, "and creative with your solutions." The champagne and Jackson's easy manner had Madison feeling more relaxed than she had in months. For a brief moment, she forgot why she'd approached him in the first place. "So what brings you to this event?" she asked. "Are you a patron of the arts?" "Something like that," he answered vaguely. "I have a particular interest in education initiatives. And you?" "I'm an interior designer. My firm is doing some pro bono work redesigning classroom spaces for the foundation." She hesitated before adding, "It's good publicity for a small business trying to rebuild." "Rebuild?" Jackson prompted. Madison sighed. "My ex-fiancé and I had a joint design firm. When we split, I lost most of our clients to him. I'm essentially starting from scratch." Jackson studied her with newfound interest. "That's impressive. Most people would have given up. Trust me, I considered it." Madison's laugh held little humor. "But design is the one thing I'm actually good at. I couldn't let him take that too." Their conversation flowed naturally for the next half hour, moving from design to travel to books they'd both enjoyed. Madison found herself genuinely enjoying Jackson's company, almost forgetting they were strangers who'd met under false pretenses. "Your ex has been watching us for the past 10 minutes, Jackson mentioned casually, while refilling her water glass. Madison tensed. "Really? Don't look now, but yes, and he doesn't seem pleased. Jackson's hand moved to the small of her back, a gesture that seemed protective rather than presumptuous. Good, Madison said with more confidence than she felt. Maybe now he knows how it feels to be the one watching someone else. The evening progressed with Madison introducing Jackson to several potential clients. He played along flawlessly, occasionally mentioning her extraordinary eye for transformative spaces in a way that had business cards being pressed into her hands. It wasn't until they were sampling desserts near the chocolate fountain that Madison's friend Abigail pulled her aside. "Who is that man you've been hanging on all night?" Abigail whispered excitedly. "Just someone I met," Madison replied evasively. "Why?" Abigail's eyes widened. "Are you serious? That's Jackson Reed, as in Reed Enterprises, as in the company that just purchased the Harrington building downtown for their new headquarters." Madison felt the blood drain from her face. "What? He's worth billions, Maddie, and rumor has it they're looking for a design firm to handle the interior renovation." Abigail squeezed her arm. "Please tell me you've been talking up your business." Madison's mind raced. The Harrington building renovation was exactly the kind of high-profile project that could re-establish her reputation, and she'd been using its owner as a human shield against her ex. "I need to go," Madison mumbled, suddenly mortified by her earlier behavior. When she returned to where she'd left Jackson, he was gone. Panic rose in her chest as she scanned the room, finally spotting him deep in conversation with the event organizer near the exit. As if sensing her gaze, he looked up, and their eyes met across the room. Madison felt an inexplicable pull toward him, just as her phone chimed with a notification. A new email had arrived from Reed Enterprises with the subject line, "Meeting Request, Harrington Building Project." Madison stared at her phone screen in disbelief, rereading the email for the 5th time. The message was brief but clear. Reed Enterprises requested a meeting to discuss the Harrington Building renovation project tomorrow at 10 a.m. Her fingers hovered over the screen, trembling slightly as reality sank in. When she looked up again, Jackson Reed had vanished. "Did you see where he went?" she asked Abigail, who was watching her with undisguised curiosity. "His assistant came over and whispered something. They left together." Abigail nudged Madison playfully. "So? What happened between you two? And don't pretend it was nothing. I saw how he looked at you." Madison's cheeks flushed. "It's not what you think. I used him to avoid Daniel, and now I've been summoned to his office tomorrow morning." "You what?" Abigail's eyes widened comically. "Madison Baker, did you seriously use one of the most powerful men in the city as your human shield?" "I didn't know who he was," Madison protested, the magnitude of her faux pas hitting her full force. "Oh, God, I've probably ruined any chance at that contract before I even had one." "Or," Abigail countered, "you made quite an impression. That email came awfully fast." The ride home to her small apartment was a blur of anxiety and wild speculation. Madison replayed every moment of their conversation, cringing at how she'd practically ambushed the man. Yet he'd been surprisingly good-natured about it, even helpful. Sleep proved elusive as Madison alternated between drafting mental presentations and imagining worst-case scenarios where Jackson Reed publicly exposed her desperate ploy. By morning, she had assembled her portfolio, rehearsed her pitch a dozen times and changed outfits 4 times, finally settling on a tailored navy pantsuit that projected the confidence she definitely wasn't feeling. Reed Enterprises occupied the top 10 floors of a gleaming downtown skyscraper. Madison's stomach clenched as the elevator ascended to the executive level, her portfolio clutched against her chest like a shield. The receptionist directed her to a glass-walled conference room with sweeping views of the city skyline. "Water? Coffee?" offered a polished assistant. "Water, please," Madison managed, her mouth suddenly dry. She busied herself arranging her materials, determined to at least appear professional even if her insides were churning. She nearly jumped when the door opened 15 minutes later. Jackson Reed entered, followed by 2 serious-looking executives. Gone was the relaxed demeanor from the gala, replaced by crisp efficiency in a perfectly tailored charcoal suit. His expression revealed nothing as their eyes met. "Ms. Baker, thank you for coming on such short notice," he said formally, taking a seat across from her. "These are our project directors, Vivian Zhao and Thomas Briggs." The introductions continued with Madison struggling to focus as her heart hammered against her ribs. Was he pretending they hadn't met? Was this some kind of game? "I understand you've done work for the Westlake development," said Vivian, studying Madison's portfolio. Madison cleared her throat. "Yes, I designed their corporate offices last year, focusing on sustainable materials and adaptive workspaces." The questions continued, technical and pointed. Madison found her professional rhythm, discussing design philosophies and project management approaches. Jackson remained mostly silent, occasionally interjecting with unexpectedly insightful questions about spatial flow and user experience. An hour into what had become a surprisingly substantive meeting, Thomas and Vivian were called away to deal with an urgent matter in another department. Alone with Jackson, Madison finally addressed the elephant in the room. "Mr. Reed, about last night. Jackson, please." A hint of the warmth she'd glimpsed at the gala returned to his eyes. "And before you continue, let me clarify something. This meeting was already scheduled before last night's encounter. Your firm was recommended by the Westlake team." Madison blinked in surprise. "It was? Your email address was in our system. The timing of the message was coincidental." He leaned forward slightly. "Though I admit I was curious to see if you'd mention our previous meeting." Relief washed over Madison, followed quickly by embarrassment. "I'm still mortified about ambushing you like that." "Don't be," Jackson said, a smile playing at his lips. "It was refreshing, actually. Most people approach me with an agenda. You just needed a human barrier." "Not my proudest moment," Madison admitted. "We all have those." Something in his tone suggested personal experience. "Now shall we discuss the actual project?" The conversation shifted to the Harrington Building, a historic structure that needed modernization while preserving its architectural integrity. Madison found herself genuinely excited about the possibilities, sketching quick concepts as they talked. Jackson responded with thoughtful questions that challenged and refined her ideas. "You clearly know what you're doing," he observed, after she explained a particularly innovative solution for the main atrium. "This is what I love," Madison said honestly, "finding the soul of a space and bringing it to life." Jackson studied her for a long moment. "That passion shows in your work. It's what set your portfolio apart." "Thank you," Madison said, surprised by his candor. "That means a lot, especially after—" She stopped herself. "After starting over?" Jackson finished. "Vivian did her research. We know about your previous firm." Madison stiffened. "And that doesn't concern you, should it?" "Some clients worry about stability." Jackson shrugged. "I'm more interested in talent and determination. You've demonstrated both." Their eyes met, and Madison felt an unexpected connection, a mutual recognition that went beyond professional appreciation. The moment was interrupted when Vivian and Thomas returned. The meeting concluded with handshakes and promises of follow-up communications. Madison tried to read Jackson's expression as they parted, but his professional mask had returned, leaving her unsure where they stood. 3 days later, Madison received confirmation that Baker Design had been awarded the Harrington contract, the biggest project of her career. The notification came with a personal note from Jackson. "Looking forward to seeing your vision come to life. Dinner to discuss details, J.R." What started as a business dinner evolved into regular meetings over the following weeks. Sometimes they discussed the Harrington project, but increasingly, their conversations drifted to personal topics. Jackson's pressure-filled childhood as the heir to a business empire, Madison's struggle to rebuild her confidence after Daniel's betrayal. "He made me doubt everything about myself," Madison admitted one evening as they shared dessert at a quiet restaurant. "My talent, my judgment, my worth. Then he's an even bigger fool than I thought," Jackson replied with unexpected heat. "Anyone who can't see your value doesn't deserve your time." Their professional relationship developed alongside a growing friendship. Jackson began seeking her opinion on matters unrelated to the Harrington project, artwork for his home, a redesign of his private office. Madison found herself looking forward to their meetings with an anticipation that both excited and terrified her. "You've gone on 8 business dinners with him," Abigail pointed out during their weekly coffee date. "Are you sure that's all they are?" "Of course," Madison insisted, ignoring the flutter in her chest. "He's my client, Abby, my very important career-making client." Abigail hummed skeptically. "And the fact that he's gorgeous, brilliant, and clearly interested in you is just a coincidence?" "He's not interested in me that way," Madison protested. He's just invested in the project. But doubt had begun to creep in. Sometimes she caught Jackson watching her with an expression that seemed more personal than professional. Their conversations often strayed far from design topics, and his texts had become more frequent, sometimes arriving late at night with thoughts or ideas that seemed designed simply to maintain their connection. Just as Madison was beginning to hope for something more, Daniel reappeared in her life, determined to reclaim what he'd thrown away. Madison was reviewing fabric swatches in her small office when her assistant poked her head through the doorway. "There's someone here to see you," she said, her expression oddly tight. "Says he doesn't have an appointment but knows you'll want to see him." Before Madison could respond, Daniel stepped into view. 6 months ago, his appearance would have sent her into an emotional tailspin. Today she felt only a distant annoyance at the interruption. "Daniel," she said coolly, "this is unexpected." He flashed the smile that once made her heart race. Confident, just shy of arrogant. "Maddie, you look amazing." "Thank you. Did you need something?" Madison kept her voice even, professional. Daniel's smile faltered slightly at her detachment. "Can we talk privately?" Madison nodded to her assistant, who closed the door with obvious reluctance. "I've been thinking about us," Daniel began, settling uninvited into the chair across from her desk. "I made a mistake, Maddie. A huge mistake." Madison raised an eyebrow. "And Stephanie, your mistake." "Over," he said dismissively. "It was never serious, not like what we had." "Had being the operative word," Madison replied, surprised at how little his presence affected her now. The man who once occupied her every thought now seemed smaller somehow, less significant. Daniel leaned forward earnestly. "I've been following your work. The Harrington project? That's major, Maddie. I always knew you had it in you. Did you?" Madison couldn't keep the edge from her voice. "As I recall, you told our clients I was too emotional for large-scale projects." "I was wrong," Daniel conceded, with a humility that might have moved her once. "And I miss you. Not just professionally, us together. The plans we made." Madison studied him, searching for any remnant of the feelings that had consumed her for 5 years. There was nothing but a vague sadness for time wasted. "I'm seeing someone," she said, the words surprising her as they left her mouth. Daniel's expression darkened. "The guy from the charity gala, Jackson Reed?" He practically spat the name. "Come on, Maddie. He's using you to decorate his building. You can't seriously believe someone like him is interested in anything more." The accusation stung, partly because Madison had harbored similar doubts. What would a billionaire CEO want with someone like her beyond her professional services? "You don't know him," she defended, even as uncertainty gnawed at her. "I know his type," Daniel pressed. "I looked him up after seeing you together. Reed has a reputation, Maddie. He dates models, actresses, socialites. You're a project to him, not a girlfriend." Madison stood abruptly. "I think you should go." "Think about it," Daniel urged. "We built something together once. We could do it again, better this time. I've changed." "So have I," Madison replied firmly. "Goodbye, Daniel." After he left, Madison sank back into her chair, her thoughts in turmoil. Daniel's words had hit a vulnerable spot. What did Jackson really want from her? Their relationship had evolved beyond strictly professional, but neither had explicitly acknowledged the shift. Perhaps she had misinterpreted friendly interest as something more. That afternoon, Madison headed to the Harrington building for a scheduled walkthrough with Jackson. The historic structure was taking shape according to her vision. Walls removed to create light-filled spaces, original architectural details restored and highlighted. Normally, seeing her designs materialize filled Madison with joy. Today, doubt clouded her satisfaction. Jackson was waiting in what would become the main reception area, deep in conversation with the construction manager. He smiled when he spotted her, excusing himself to greet her. "You look troubled," he observed immediately, his brow furrowing with concern. "Just a busy morning," Madison deflected. "How are the limestone repairs coming along?" Jackson allowed the subject change, but his perceptive gaze lingered on her face. They proceeded with the walkthrough, discussing technical details and timeline adjustments. Madison maintained professional distance, suddenly hyper-aware of their every interaction. Was she just another business acquisition to him? A challenging project before he moved on to something more exciting? "You've been unusually quiet today," Jackson noted as they reviewed plans in the makeshift site office afterward. "Something on your mind?" Madison hesitated. Daniel came to see me this morning. Jackson's expression remained neutral, but she noticed his shoulders tense. The ex? What did he want? To get back together, Madison said, watching his reaction carefully. He seems to think what we had is worth salvaging. And what do you think? Jackson's voice was deliberately even. I think it's too late, she replied honestly, but he did say something that's been bothering me. About? Madison took a deep breath. About you, about us, whatever this is between us. Something flickered in Jackson's eyes, vulnerability perhaps, or apprehension. And what did he say? That someone like you wouldn't be interested in someone like me outside of a professional capacity. The words tumbled out before she could reconsider. That I'm just another project for you. Jackson's expression hardened. Someone like me. A billionaire CEO who dates models and socialites, Madison clarified, immediately regretting the accusation in her tone. I see. Jackson's voice was cool now. And you believe that assessment? I don't know what to believe, Madison admitted. We spend all this time together, but I'm never sure if it's business or something else. Jackson was quiet for a long moment, his gaze fixed on the blueprints between them. When he finally spoke, his voice was carefully measured. My position complicates relationships. People approach me with agendas. They want funding, connections, publicity. His eyes met hers. You're the only person in recent memory who approached me wanting absolutely nothing from me except to be a human shield. Despite the tension, Madison smiled faintly at the memory. I've enjoyed our time together precisely because it wasn't planned or strategic, Jackson continued, but clearly I've misread the situation. No, you haven't, Madison said quickly. I just needed to know if this is real or if I'm imagining things. It's real to me, Jackson replied simply. But perhaps we should focus on completing the project without further complications. I wouldn't want personal matters to interfere with your professional success. His words were reasonable, considerate even, but Madison felt a hollow disappointment spreading through her chest. Before she could respond, Jackson's assistant appeared with an urgent message. Their conversation was left unresolved as business demands pulled him away. The following weeks brought a subtle but definite shift in their relationship. Jackson remained involved in the Harrington project, but delegated more oversight to Vivian. Their private dinners ceased. When they did meet, conversations remained strictly professional. Madison threw herself into her work, determined to make the Harrington building her masterpiece, regardless of personal disappointments. Her firm had gained attention from the high-profile project, bringing new clients and opportunities. Professionally, everything was falling into place. Personally, she felt an emptiness that success couldn't fill. You're both being ridiculous, Abigail declared after listening to Madison's explanation of the situation. Did you actually ask him how he feels about you? Use those exact words? Not exactly, Madison admitted. Then how do you expect anything to be resolved? Abigail demanded. You basically accused him of using you as a charity case, and he backed off out of respect for your career. If either of you would actually communicate, this could be fixed in 5 minutes. Madison knew her friend was right, but pride and fear kept her silent. The Harrington project was approaching completion, the grand reopening scheduled for the following week. Soon she wouldn't even have the pretense of business to connect them. The night before the building's official unveiling, Madison visited alone to see her vision in its finished form. The historic structure had been transformed, modern functionality seamlessly integrated with classical elegance. Soft lighting highlighted restored moldings and contemporary artwork. It was exactly as she had imagined it, perhaps the finest work she'd ever done. It's magnificent. Madison turned to find Jackson standing in the doorway, his expression unreadable in the dim light. What are you doing here? She asked, her heart suddenly racing. Same as you, I imagine. He moved into the space, looking around appreciatively. Seeing it complete before tomorrow's chaos. They stood in silence for a moment, admiring the transformed space. The tension between them had an almost physical presence. Madison, Jackson began at the same moment she said, I need to tell you. They both stopped, shared an awkward laugh. Ladies first, Jackson offered. Madison gathered her courage. Daniel was wrong about you, about us, and I was wrong to doubt what I felt. Jackson's expression softened as he moved closer to Madison, the space between them charged with unspoken feelings. What exactly did you feel? He asked, his voice low and tentative in a way she'd never heard before. Gone was the confident CEO, replaced by a man clearly afraid of misreading the situation again. Madison took a deep breath. That there's something real between us. Something that has nothing to do with buildings or business deals. She gestured around the beautifully renovated space. This project brought us together, but what I feel for you exists completely separate from it. Hope flickered across Jackson's features. When you mentioned your ex that day, I thought you were trying to let me down gently, that you'd reconsidered your options and found me wanting. Madison shook her head. The opposite. I was terrified that what Daniel said might be true, that I was just another project to you, someone temporary. Madison, Jackson said her name with such tenderness that it made her heart constrict. Do you know what I thought when you grabbed my arm at that charity gala? She winced slightly. That some crazy woman was invading your personal space? A smile tugged at his lips, that for the first time in years, someone was seeing me as just a man, not a bank account or a business opportunity. You needed a person, not Jackson Reed of Reed Enterprises. He took her hand, his thumb brushing across her knuckles. And every moment after that only confirmed what I suspected, that you were extraordinary. Your passion for your work, your resilience after what your ex did to you, your integrity in every decision for this project. I found myself looking forward to our meetings more than anything else in my day. Madison's pulse quickened. Why didn't you say anything? Professional boundaries, Jackson admitted. I didn't want to compromise your position on the project or make you uncomfortable. And honestly, I wasn't sure you'd believe my intentions were genuine. His expression turned rueful. People tend to assume the worst about men in my position, that we're either looking for trophies or easy conquests. Daniel certainly pushed that narrative, Madison said. Daniel sounds like he's projecting his own shortcomings, Jackson replied with a flash of anger. Not everyone uses people the way he used you. They stood in silence for a moment, still holding hands in the dimly lit atrium that embodied their shared vision. So where does that leave us? Madison finally asked. The project's complete. There's no professional reason for us to keep meeting. Jackson's lips curved into a slow smile. I think that's the best part. Now there's nothing stopping us from finding out what this could be without business complicating things. He hesitated before continuing. Though I should warn you, my life comes with complications of its own. Media attention, public scrutiny, people making assumptions. His eyes searched hers. It's not always easy being associated with me. Madison considered his words. Is that why you've kept our meetings so private? To protect me from that world? Jackson nodded. Partly. I wanted you to have the chance to establish yourself professionally on your own merits. The press can be unkind, especially to women they perceive as getting ahead through connections. The consideration behind his actions touched Madison deeply. I appreciate that, but I'm stronger than I look. I survived Daniel's betrayal and rebuilt my career from nothing. I think I can handle a few tabloid photographers. You shouldn't have to, Jackson said fiercely. But if you're willing to navigate that world with me, I'd like nothing more than to see where this goes. Properly this time. No pretenses, no business agendas. Madison felt a weight lifting from her shoulders. I'd like that too. His eyes dropped to her lips, a silent question in them. Madison answered by closing the distance between them. Their first kiss was gentle, tentative, a new beginning rather than a culmination. When they pulled apart, Jackson's expression held a vulnerability she'd never seen before. I've wanted to do that since the night we met, he admitted. Even when I was using you as a human shield, Madison teased. Especially then, he laughed. Your determination was incredibly attractive. The grand opening of the Harrington building the following evening was a triumph. Business leaders, city officials, and design enthusiasts gathered to celebrate the historic structure's rebirth. Madison found herself the center of attention, fielding compliments and inquiries about future projects. She was deep in conversation with a potential client when Jackson appeared at her side, 2 champagne flutes in hand. I hope you don't mind the interruption, he said smoothly, offering her a glass. But I believe the designer of the hour deserves a toast. The businessman Madison had been speaking with immediately deferred to Jackson, clearly aware of who held more influence in the room. Your work here is extraordinary, Miss Baker, Jackson continued, his professional tone belied by the warmth in his eyes. Reed Enterprises couldn't be more pleased with the transformation. The pleasure was mine, Mr. Reed, Madison replied. matching his formal tone while struggling to suppress a smile. They clinked glasses, a private moment in the midst of the public celebration. Only Abigail, watching from across the room, caught the lingering glance they shared before duty called them in separate directions. Later that evening, as the crowd thinned, Jackson found Madison alone in the rooftop garden she'd designed as a private retreat for building occupants. "Hiding from your admirers?" he asked, joining her at the railing overlooking the city lights. "Taking a moment to process," she corrected. "This is the biggest night of my professional life." "The first of many," Jackson predicted, his shoulder brushing against hers. "Your phone will be ringing non-stop after tonight." Madison turned to face him. "Are you trying to tell me you'll have competition for my attention, Mr. Reed?" "I don't consider it competition when I've already won the most important contract," he replied, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear with familiar tenderness. "And what contract is that?" "The one for your personal time," Jackson said softly, "which I value considerably more than your professional services, impressive as they are." 6 months later, Madison's design firm had expanded to a team of 8, with projects lined up for the next year. Her reputation for blending historical elements with contemporary functionality had made her the designer of choice for prestigious renovation projects across the city. Her personal life had undergone an equally dramatic transformation. Dating Jackson Reed meant adapting to a level of scrutiny she'd never experienced before. Their relationship had made headlines in business journals and gossip columns alike, with speculation ranging from calculated networking to genuine romance. "Does it bother you?" Jackson asked one evening as they relaxed in his penthouse, a tabloid featuring their photo from a charity event open on the coffee table. The headline questioned whether the design darling had engineered their meeting as a business strategy. Madison laughed, closing the magazine. "If they only knew I literally grabbed you in desperation to avoid my ex. Not exactly a master plan." "Sometimes the best things aren't planned at all," Jackson mused, pulling her closer on the sofa. "Speaking of which," he reached into his pocket and produced a small velvet box. Madison's breath caught as he opened it to reveal a vintage emerald ring, the deep green stone surrounded by tiny diamonds. "I wasn't planning to do this tonight," Jackson admitted, suddenly looking uncharacteristically nervous. "But I realized there's never going to be a perfect moment, and I don't want to wait anymore." Madison stared at the ring, then at the man holding it, the stranger who had become essential to her happiness. "I know it's fast," he continued when she remained silent. "And I know your last engagement ended painfully, but I also know that what we have is unlike anything I've ever experienced. You see me, Madison, the real me, not the CEO or the bank account." He took her hand. "I love you. Marry me." Tears filled Madison's eyes as memories flashed through her mind, clinging to a stranger at a charity gala, professional meetings that evolved into deep conversations, the hurt and misunderstandings they'd worked through, and the joy they'd found together. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I'll marry you." As Jackson slipped the ring onto her finger, Madison couldn't help but marvel at how her desperate attempt to avoid her past had unexpectedly led her to her future. Sometimes the most significant moments in life began with the simplest actions, like clinging to a stranger at a party, not knowing he would become the person she couldn't imagine living without.